One of the things you need to master as a new animator is the 12 principles of animation. And in this video, we're going to look at the first principle, squash and stretch. So stay tuned. Hey guys, my name is Ian and welcome to my Start Animating YouTube channel, the channel that is specifically aimed at everyone who is just starting out at animation. And if that is you, then you are at the right place. So make sure you click on that like button and also remember to click on that subscribe button and also on that little notification bell so that you can get notified every week when I upload a new video. And just before we get into today's topic, I also would like to invite you, if you are new to animation, I've got a free online training video. It is absolutely free and you can just go in the description box below. I've got a link there. You can just click there. You can register. I'll send you the free video. And the great thing about that video is by the end of that video, you would have created your very own or your very first animation. You work along with me. You can pause and you can work with me and you can play again. And for me, the most important thing is to get started, to start animating, because that is the only way you will improve, that's the only way you will learn, and that's the only way you're going to get better. So feel free to click on that link, sign up. It is absolutely free, and by the end of that video you would have finished your very first animation and you will have all the information or the basic and the basic knowledge when it comes to animations to continue. You'll be able to go and create your very own animations after that video. So feel free to go and sign up. Now today we are going to look at squash and stretch. That is the first principle when it comes to the 12 principles of animation. And I'm sure if you go and watch a lot of your favorite cartoons, you will see squash and stretch everywhere. And it really, if you implement these 12 principles in your animations, you're really going to improve your animations. So make sure you follow the series. I'll have a link in the description below of this whole playlist. I'll create a playlist of this whole series. Every week I'm going to release a new video on the 12 principles, and you can just watch all of them, and I'm sure it will help you. And make sure you practice them and know when to use them. So one of the places where you use your squash and stretch, especially the stretch part, is when you want to show off speed. So let me quickly show you, for example, if you have a ball, if you've got a ball, a round circle there, and that ball needs to go that direction, here's the floor and it needs to bounce. So what you'll need to do is, as the ball goes faster, it needs to get longer, and at the bottom it squashes, and then when it bounces up it will be a bit longer again. So basically you get the idea. As the ball goes faster, it gets longer, and then when it stops it squashes and then it bounces back. So that is just a basic understanding of squash and stretch. I think the bouncing ball is one of the first things as an animator that you'll learn and need to master. So if you're starting out with animation, make sure you practice the bouncing ball, because you're going to get used to timing. You'll be able to implement the squash and stretch, and that alone is 2 of the principles of the 12 principles. So if you can, try and practice the bouncing ball. But as you can see here, the ball is round. It starts off with a round circle, and then as it goes faster, it goes flatter. So one thing to notice, that the circle needs to be at its flattest at the point where it's at its fastest. So obviously just before the ball hits the ground, that is when it has reached its full momentum, and then obviously at that point it will be on its flattest or longest, and then obviously when it hits the ground it is flat. So what this indicates is the speed and the momentum of the ball. So that is one of the things that you use your squash and stretch for. Let me just clear here again. One thing you also need to remember when you do squash and stretch is the mass of your object, in this case the ball, needs to be the same at all times. So for instance, if this is your ball, when it moves, it needs to get flatter. So this one is actually too long because it needs to be the same. It needs to be around about there. So the mass, the volume of the ball needs to be the same. So the flatter it gets, the thinner it needs to get as well. Or the longer it gets, it needs to get thinner as well. So if what you don't want to do is, for example, this is the ball and now you do this. It gets longer, but the object gets bigger. So what you want is, the longer your object gets, the thinner it needs to get as well. And then obviously it needs to be the same mass as the original object. So let me just quickly erase. So what you basically want is, now you want it to be almost the same mass, but it's thinner. So that is too thin, but you guys kind of get the idea. So the mass of your object needs to be the same at all times. Now, an easier way to illustrate this is with a cube. So let's say, for example, this is your cube or your square. So when it gets flatter, you can't do that, okay? Because what you need to do is, as this gets flatter, the sides needs to go out. So basically what this needs to look like is something like that. So as an object gets flatter, the sides also needs to go out, but this object, the mass needs to be the same as the original object. Okay, so obviously you can't have that. Okay, so you can see it just doesn't fit. So that is one thing that you always need to remember when you do your squash and stretch, that the mass of your object, when it gets stretched or when it gets squashed, the mass must always stay the same. Otherwise you're going to lose your proportions and your animation just won't look natural. Another thing that you can use your squash and stretch for is to indicate the mass or how hard your object is. For instance, if you've got two objects, okay, here are two balls that you can that will bounce. So what will happen if this one gets flattened, but this one stays the same, okay, and they drop? You can see that this one is actually a lot more softer. This is almost like a water balloon, where this one is, when it bounces and it keeps its shape, it gives you the idea or the impression that this object, this ball, is a lot harder. So this might be a bowling ball and this is probably a water balloon. So you can also use your squash and stretch to show how hard or how soft and your object is, especially when they bounce. So that is another way that you can use your squash and stretch in your animations. One of the best places to use squash and stretch is actually with facial expressions. This really brings your character to life. And if I can quickly show you just an example, if I draw a character here, let's say that's his face. This is just a rough sketch, so I'm not going to do much. Okay, so that is your first image, and now you want him to be like shocked. He's shocked. So obviously you can have same character. This is just a terrible drawing, sorry for that. It's just to illustrate. And then obviously he is shocked. So his eyebrows is lifted and his mouth is open. But as you can see from the first image, if you animate it to the second one, it doesn't really say much, okay? So what we can do is we can stretch his face because now he is shocked, okay? So let's do that. So let's make his face longer. You can make his eyes a lot bigger, and now you can really play. And you can see we've stretched his face, and now it just adds so much more character to your facial expression. It just adds so much more. He looks a lot more shocked. But you don't want your character to go from the first impression to the second one just like that. So what you want just to add more personality to this, what you can do, let me just move these two, let's just move them a little bit apart, and let's just move this one to the side as well. Okay, so what you then do is you can maybe let him squash in and then be surprised. So what you can do is, now we make his face a little bit flatter and his eyes are closed. You bring his eyebrows down. You can lift his mouth a little bit up. So now what happens, his face is in a normal position. It squashes in and then he goes out and looks surprised. So now there is, from this normal facial expression, he squashes in and then he goes over to look surprised. So this is a great way to just make your characters, you just add more personality. There's just more, your characters just, there's just more, how can I put it? There's just more life in your character, and this really takes your animation to a next level if you implement this in your character animations. But now you want to implement this in your animation. So I have opened up Cartoon Animator 4 here, and basically what we're going to do is we're just going to do a basic bouncing ball. So it's just going to go drop down and bounce up. So it's not your traditional bouncing ball that goes sideways and bounce little till it stops. This is just to illustrate how you can animate a bouncing ball and use your squash and stretch, for example. So basically what you're going to do is, you've got your ball here and you want to just create your timeline quickly. And so we're going to, let's say at 25, and we drop him there. Let's see what's the timing. Okay, so that is too slow. So let's move it to 20. That's better. And then maybe at 40, another 20, we take him not about there. So let's see how that looks. That's okay. So now obviously as it drops it gains momentum, so let's quickly add that. So that is quite easy with Cartoon Animator 4, so you can just accelerate. And then on that one, obviously as it goes higher it loses momentum, so it decelerates. So let's have a look how that looks now. That looks great. Okay, so now as you can see it is just a plain bouncing ball. So what we want to do is we now want to stretch it. Okay, so when it reaches its there, we want him to be flat, but as on its fastest point, around about there, we want it to be at its flattest, okay, because that is where it's at its fastest. So what we can do is we can transform the ball so we can make it longer, but remember we also need to flatten it. Okay, so let's have a look. That is too much, so let's just we can maybe let it start transforming a little bit later. So let's just copy that sprite maybe from there. Let's have a look now. That looks better. So when it's at its lowest point, now we can stretch it. So we make it flat. So let's have a look. Okay. And now when it goes up at its fastest point, it will be probably there. Now we need to make it flat again. At the top it will be his normal size, so let's just copy and paste there, and I'm just going to paste this here and just make slight adjustments, and let's quickly press play, and you kind of get the idea. So that is how you use squash and stretch with your animation. Now this is not perfect. I just quickly slammed this together, but this is just for you to get an idea, and you can, whatever animation software you use, you can just implement this as well. And I would highly recommend you guys start off with a bouncing ball. Try and perfect it and make sure it looks nice. Your squash and stretch is perfect. Mine is not perfect. It definitely needs some tweaking, but this is basically just to give you an idea how you implement squash and stretch in your animations. Hey guys, so I was just busy editing this video and I realized my SD card ran full right at the end, so I've missed about 30 seconds. So I just decided to make a quick video just to thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, remember to click that like button and also go and click on that subscribe button and also on that notification bell so that you can get notified every week when I upload a new video. So guys, from me, God bless and goodbye.